There's a creep. Let's get straight on to it.
Some of Dan Schneider's shows. It was like impossible to avoid him. It'd be like trying to dodge raindrops during a thunderstorm. Dan Schneider during this period
This
was
the homie,
the
man.
king of
Go
children's
subscribe.
television programs. He made some of the most influential productions like Drake and Josh, The Amanda Show, iCarly. His resume is just stacked with tons of shows that I imagine meant a lot to many of you growing up. And make no mistake, you meant a lot to the
iCarly,
creator.
bro. What iCarly did to the culture, man, goes unnoticed, bro. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. Like, it really goes unnoticed, man. And that fucker made a shit. Like, oh my god.
These shows as well. Well, not so much you, but your feet.
I wasn't really on Nickelodeon too much. Obviously, I watched Nickelodeon shows. I watched Victoria or Victorious, whatever the fuck the show was called. Sam and Cat. I watched a little bit of it, but I didn't really watch it too much. I think Henry Danger. I watched a little bit of it, but that's when I started growing up, so I stopped watching TV and shit like that. Obviously, Zoe 101. You got Drake and Josh. I watched a little bit of it, but I was more so a Disney kid. You feel me? I was more so on the Disney side. I know Disney got some fucked up shit too, but this shit crazy, bro.
Certainly did. The creator of these shows is a monstrous foot fetishist, Dan Get in the Van Schneider.
That's crazy.
He is a vile, creepy, disgusting human being, and this has been known for years.
Facts.
However, a new docuseries just dropped really diving into this subject matter and putting a spotlight on it in a way that hasn't previously been explored. It's called Quiet on Set. Now, if you don't know what Dan looks like, here's a nice picture of him here. He looks like he was made in the Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator.
That's crazy.
Dan Schneider has become the face of Quiet on Set. However, it actually explores more than that. It's like a whole deep look at all of the horrible things that were going on.
I miss the old YouTube plaques, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. Is it just me? I know some of y'all might say y'all like the all gold one and shit, the all silver and shit, but I ain't gonna lie, this one just felt more like a trophy, bro. Like, I can't, either way, I'm gonna be grateful when I get these. I'm gonna be grateful. I'm gonna be hella grateful, you know what I'm saying? But this shit just looks so much more beautiful, bro. Is it just me?
During these Nickelodeon productions, it's more than just Dan, but he obviously plays a central role here because he made these shows. He was the head honcho of most of this, and he was well aware of some of these terrible and downright criminal things that were going on behind the scenes on some of these shows. And the reason I mention the foot fetishism off rip here is because that was one of the first things that people really caught on to in the public eye. After Dan's glory days at Nickelodeon, people started to pick up on how odd it was that a lot of these children's shows had an emphasis on feet. Pretty frequently, it was a common thread throughout a lot of these shows, like feet humor and having these child actors and actresses displaying their feet. And in 2013, one of the shows...
Forex.com, committed to helping improve your trading skills with innovative tools. Our
Dan worked on, Sam and Cat, actually ran a competition where kids were supposed to submit pictures of their feet to them. Like, that's weird. No matter how you spin it, that's a really weird thing to request from your audience of children, to take pictures of their feet for you. That's just downright creepy and wrong. I can't believe that tweet is still up, by the way, over a decade later, and no one thought to delete that. That is impressive. But anyway, people started to pick up on Dan's fixation with stompers, and it seemed like his fetish was bleeding into his work, and he was having the children unknowingly participate in it by having them display their feet. That's what it seemed to a lot of people, so it was obviously very concerning, so people did more and more digging. They found more and more evidence of Dan being an awful piece of shit behind the scenes with a lot of shady things going on there, and it just led to this reputation that people for years have known that Dan blows loads to toes Schneider is not a good person. And now, Quiet on the Set has released, and so much information has come out, not just about Dan, but about that entire Nickelodeon workplace around these child stars. Arguably the largest piece of new information that dropped during this docuseries was the sexual abuse of Drake Bell by someone named Brian Peck. So, Brian Peck...
Yeah, a lot of people, like, getting it all messed up. People think that Dan did it. I'm not defending Dan at all right now, but I'm just saying a lot of people thinking that Dan's the one who did it to Drake, but that is indeed not the case.
Was a coach at Nickelodeon whom was sexually abusing Drake Bell, and he was actually convicted in 2004. Bro. He spent 16 months in the Slammer, and then immediately upon release, landed a job with Disney. If that doesn't show just how rotten to the core this industry is, I don't know what will. There is deep-seated evil in Hollywood. He went to jail for lewd acts with a minor. He is a sex offender, a convicted sex offender, and he immediately got a Disney Channel job.
Yeah, that's so wild, bro. Because even regular motherfuckers, if they was to do that shit, bro, their life is over after that. You're not getting a job. You know how hard it is to get a job, bro? You know how hard it is to get a job if you have anything on your resume, bro? I don't have nothing on my resume, but I know I got folks and shit that, you know what I'm saying, got shit on their resume and how hard it is to get jobs, bro. And this nigga landed a job at Disney? Bro, come on.
Working on the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody? What the fuck? That's mind-bogglingly evil. Like that's not just irresponsible. That's malicious. It's not like they just made some kind of mistake where they put a sex offender in a role where he works almost exclusively with children. It's not like they made a whoopsie-daisy. They just happened to overlook that he's a sex offender. They knew. They would have to know, and they still hired him for that role regardless. That's scary. That's terrifying. They're actively enabling a fucking sex offender to potentially prey on more children. Drake also described that when he went into court, Brian Peck had the support of some very powerful and familiar faces. There were 41 character letters written to the judge asking for leniency for Brian Peck. 41 letters of support from industry personnel that were trying to get a lighter sentence for Brian Peck, even knowing that he is guilty of the crimes for which he is about to face the punishment, asking for a more generous sentence. These weren't just 41 pieces of toilet paper with nonsensical scribblings on it from nobodies.
I can't attack him too much, you feel me? Because you got people sending letters out to, even though I don't know if Tory shot Meg, you had people sending out letters for Tory, you feel me? You had people come to his defense, you know what I'm saying, their whole court case and all that. So, you know what I'm saying, people are going to do that regardless, but having that many, like, you know what I'm saying, celebrities and, you know what I'm saying, people of that status support you is kind of crazy over an allegation like this, you feel me? Or not even an allegation. Nigga was proven guilty. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just crazy. That's just wild to me.
These were 41 character letters that were submitted by industry personnel, some of whom were high up on the food chain, so these things carried weight. And they're advocating for someone who is guilty of sexually abusing a child.
Guilty is crazy.
Holy shit. They just viewed it as not a big deal, I guess. Listen, Judge, I understand Brian Peck diddled a child. Who at Nickelodeon hasn't? Are you really going to throw him away or put him away and throw away the key for that? What about season 3 of Drake and Josh? What actually matters here? Let's think about that. Like, this is crazy to me. It almost stops being surprising learning that Brian Peck landed a job at Disney right after his 16 months in prison for this crime, because it seems like that entire industry just does not give a fuck about the safety of kids to begin with. So like I said, Quiet on Set isn't just about Dan Schneider and all of the awful things that he has done. It's about how awful that entire industry itself is. But once again, Dan Schneider does still play a large role in this docuseries, highlighting the bad workplace and environment that he would cultivate, the weird shit that would go on in, like, the writer's room and the way he'd treat some people, just a whole plethora of different bad stuff. And in response to all of this, Dan Schneider himself actually stepped out from the shadows, leaving his little gopher's hidey hole and addressing it head on in one of the most painfully scripted and staged apology video interviews I've ever seen.
Podcast, I see a little clip. I played Tebow. And like, why is he interviewing him? Tebow from iCarly. Why is he interviewing him? What the fuck? Bro, I need to check this interview out or something, because what is going on?
iCarly. I got a chance to watch the Quiet on Set program, and I reached out to Dan to see if it was something.
Nigga, was you a part of the X?
I'm pleased to say that he said yes. Dan, how are you?
I'm okay.
The interview is not conducted by a professional. It's conducted by a former actor in one of Dan Schneider's shows, and he is not equipped to handle something like this. This is the biggest load of baloney. Like, this is just some straight up fucking malarkey. There is no pushback from Boogie on anything in this interview at all. It's just strategic softballs designed to give Dan Schneider some kind of sympathetic PR win here, where he comes out of this looking better, where he comes out of this like not the bad guy. It's so deplorable that they'd even try something like this with a straight face. I think it is extremely transparent what this is, and I'm happy to say pretty much everyone saw straight through this. This did not give Dan Schneider the dunk I think he was expecting it to. This did not make him look any better in the public's eye. It actually just made it look even more sinister that he was able to, it seems, pre-prepare this interview to mitigate the potential fallout from the docuseries airing.
Let's talk about the massages.
Okay.
Watching the content yesterday, it was disturbing.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do.
It's cool that you know what I'm saying, you acknowledging that, but you need to be acknowledging that behind bars. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to be a free man acknowledging this shit. You don't get the right to do that. I don't know how you do have the right and you sitting in a fucking chair, not in a cell. Like, this shit don't make sense to me, bro. It don't make sense.
Never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to
Shut
anybody
up.
that I ever did in that
spit on your face, bro.
Dan, talk to me about the writer's room. From what I saw, not cool.
No, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if I can cut right to the chase, let me just say, no writer should ever feel uncomfortable in any writer's room, ever. Period. The end. No excuses.
It starts with what's supposed to be this moment of taking accountability. Dan Schneider's just point blank apologizing and, you know, holding himself accountable for the sins of the past type vibe.
Like,
except he's...
How did Amanda Bayes, like, y'all's fathers, like, me, bro, when I become a father, bro, I would never let some shit like this ever fucking slide in my life. You know what I'm saying? Dan Schneider, you gotta go. In my books, you're going. You're going. You're going, bro. I'm not gonna disclose nothing. You're going. Like, bro, what was y'all parents
really
doing,
not.
bro?
Like, these aren't things
I know
that
money
you just,
can't
like,
be that, like,
hand wave
important.
away
Like,
with,
what
like,
the
a simple
fuck?
apology. A lot of what was reported is, like, unforgivable bad shit.
For real.
Like, there's really no way of apologizing for the things that Dan Schneider has done and also been accused of.
Oh, God.
So it's just, it feels so fucking insincere. And Dan Schneider got away with it, and it seems will continue to get away with it. So he loses nothing by doing something like this, which just makes it frustrating to see him parade around pretending like he cares now.
Why can't they get bro? Why can't they get bro out of here? They about to get Diddy locked up. I ain't gonna hold you. Diddy about to go, bro. Diddy on a time clock, bro. I ain't gonna hold you. He about to go. Why can't this nigga go? Like, shit don't make sense.
All of a sudden. Like, it's extremely easy for him to just be like, oh, yeah, that was bad. I feel bad for that. Oh, what a regret. Yep, not good. Like, it's just, I would have liked if the interviewer was someone that would legitimately dive into a lot of these things and actually press him on a lot of these things. This interview never even addresses the things that people want to hear from Dan on, such as like the sexualization of the children in those shows. Even outside of all the foot stuff, Dan included some very inappropriate things in his programs, such as Ariana Grande milking a potato, and then another scene with her getting like splashed with water and shit. Like, all of it was very unacceptable and seems to sexualize the child actors and actresses in his productions. And that was never even brought up in this interview. So this interview just, it doesn't have any real substance to it. It is legitimately just a scripted PR play from Dan.
I cut it. I want my shows to be popular. I want everyone to like. The more people who like the shows, the happier I am.
Yeah.
So if there's anything in a show that needs to be cut because it's upsetting somebody, let's cut it.
So I think it's big for you to say with your work, if it's viewed as that today, you don't have a problem.
Cut it. Cut it.
Is this
I mean, that's a solution.
The last thing I want to ever do is put any content in a show that's going to upset my audience and make them want to turn off the TV. Why would I ever want to do that?
That makes sense.
This is him addressing a
fucking
question
did.
that Boogie asked about, like, inappropriate jokes in there without getting too deep into the weeds, just a broad subject of some of these jokes have aged poorly and people look at them as inappropriate for a child audience. How do you respond? The most softball way of asking this question, mind you, and his response was, cut it. Just get rid of it. I don't want it in the show. If it's aged bad and it makes people uncomfortable or, you know, this and that, cut it. And Boogie's like patting him on the back for it, like, oh my goodness, wow. That's so benevolent. What a great solution. Yeah, that makes sense. What the fuck? It's so easy for him to say that now, but it doesn't take away the fact that you filmed it. If you cut Ariana Grande milking a potato type shit, if you cut some of the foot stuff that you included in there, it doesn't change the fact that you still had the child actors and actresses doing that shit and were sexualizing them. It still happened. That's still bad. Cutting it from the final product doesn't erase what you did. It's so frustrating that there's no pushback on any of this in the interview. He just gets to let him say his piece and then get applause for it. It's so stupid.
And when Drake and I talked and he told me what had happened, I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened in my career
you weren't.
thus far.
No, you
41
weren't.
of those people wrote letters for Peck, character letters, praising him for who he was and asking for leniency, and they knew that he was guilty. They knew he had confessed to some degree, and they still did this. But Drake's mom, a lovely woman who I stay in contact with this day, she came to me at the time and she said, would you help me with my speech for the judge? And I said, of course. And I did.
Dan Schneider's fishing for the Nickelodeon's Kid Choice Award for the best fake crying. It feels super forced and super insincere.
Oh God, I thought he was like, you know what I'm saying, showing how the mom was crying or something.
The Drake and Brian Peck case, where he mentions 41 people wrote those letters and it baffled him. And then Drake's mom actually asked him to help her write her piece, which he did. And that leads me to a question of, if you knew all this, why didn't you back up Drake Bell? The way it's described, Brian Peck had all of these people in his corner, but Drake really only had his mom and his brother. Why weren't you more involved then? Like, I imagine that could have been extraordinarily helpful. But regardless, this interview doesn't do anything to change my perception of Dan Schneider or anyone else's, really, I imagine, because it's still nothing. This isn't really an interview. It's just a PR piece disguised as an interview. It's just more despicable garbage here. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Again, the docuseries is called Quiet on Set. It's out now. And yeah, just kind of wanted to go over it a little bit. That's it. So yeah.
Fuck Dan Schneider, bro. You need to go down, bro. And I hope you do. Karma is gonna get your ass one way or another. Roger Sen came in, y'all. Fuck Dan Snyder in the chat. Fuck Dan Snyder.